All right. Welcome to Inside the Grind podcast, the podcast for people building real coffee shops. Every episode, we sit down with someone who's deep in the day to day, hiring, fixing, worrying, making hard choices, and still showing up to serve. These are honest stories from founders in the thick of it. No fluff, no ego, just the real grind and what's getting them through. If you're building something on your blog, this one's for you. Brought to you by Coffee Futures Fund. Right, Matthew, Marco, welcome to Inside the Grind podcast. We are
Thank you,
so
Akshat.
excited to have you and have this quick chat with you about customers, about how to read insights. First of all, welcome. Welcome.
Thank you, Akshat. Really happy to be here.
So, Matthew, I have a couple of questions for you. Quick fire questions. Let me start with this. What makes a coffee shop brand, a small coffee shop brand, stick in people's mind? What customers actually notice when they walk in?
The first thing that I think customers notice when they walk in is an overall impression of the environment where they are. And it's a lot of implicit signaling that people receive. And we do this all the time. We do this in social interactions, right? We adjust our tone, we adjust our vocabulary sometimes, even our accents based on who we're interacting with. A coffee shop as a business, as a physical location, doesn't have that same faculty to code switch. And so it's giving that customer one impression, and all of the signals that they process from that kind of first impression kind of tell them where they are in relation to it. The furnishings, the music, the smell, the kinds of other customers who are in there are sending signals to the person who walks in the door. What is it about this place that makes it distinct and special? And why should I choose to spend my money here? And so that's, I think, when I think about first impressions of a brand, there's a lot that's implicit. There's a lot that's subconscious. And I think that as somebody who's consulted with a lot of brands, that's really the gist of it, is mastering what are the things that you're subconsciously projecting as a business. So, I hope that answers the question that as you were thinking about it. But that's when I think about those small coffee brands and how they become distinct. It's about how that initial impression is a hook, is something about your identity feels identifiable and feels like something that I want to have a relationship with.
I like that you said about implicit signals, right? So, do you feel there are any, there is a priority and order to this signal? So, you talked about ambience, you talked about furnishing, you talked about music, you talked about how you greet and welcome people, all of it, right?
Yeah.
So, is there an order to it, or is the magic is in the combination of everything?
I think that the magic is in the combination of everything. And I think that there's an element of kind of chaos to it, I'll say, in the sense that there are a lot of different elements that are creating this image and this identity. And you can identify a lot of them and master them. But I will also say that some of the best brands don't try to over control. There can be an impression that customers have that something is amiss when something is too perfect. Right. And so that's what I say when I say something like chaos is kind of a part of it. You should try to control certain things about how your brand is perceived in the world. But up to a point, you have to allow for people to enter into it, to bring their own interpretation to it. Otherwise, they're not going to feel that same kind of deep association that you want them to have, that some of the best brands in the world generate with their customers, is they allow a little bit of negative space for the customer to put themselves into it, right? And so when I think about what a smaller brand might do, I think that there are some key things that you can focus on. Take it back to the five senses. What does a person touch? What do they see? Do they taste? Do they smell? What do they hear? Right? Jot some notes under each of those things. Think about those things as implicit signals. What are the cultural associations that your music has? What are the ways that light is perceived in your space? What is the overwhelming smell? Is it that sort of fresh roasted coffee? Is it the brewed drinks? Is there something else that you're, putting into the air as an aroma? Is it food? All of these things can affect how a customer takes that in.
That's well said. And it's interesting, right? Because you have spent so much time with so many brands and helped them, guided them through having the right lens to understanding customers and catering to making their experience beautiful, right? So, on that note, I often hear so many coffee shops saying that we serve everyone,
Yeah.
right? Why do you think that mindset holds them back? What is your advice?
Yeah, I think that this is one of those situations where when you do everything, you're doing nothing. Or when you serve everyone, you're serving no one, right? And there's no such thing in the world as like true neutrality, right? You're not ever a blank canvas to anybody around you, right? And that's going back to the thing I was saying about some of those implicit signals. And so you have to be aware of the image that you're presenting and how that already creates some limits around who can patronize your business, who sees themselves in this brand. And I think that in terms of, being a place for everyone being versus a place for some people, I don't think that you should enact exclusion as a policy, right? But I think that you should be aware of the signals that you're sending and who you're making feel at home here. I live in Washington Heights, Manhattan, and it is a neighborhood that has kind of distinct socioeconomic demographic pockets, let's say, right? Kind of racially divided, economically divided, right? And so there are some businesses that feel like they cater to the kind of wealthier, more affluent English speaking part of this neighborhood. And there are some businesses that feel like they cater to the primarily Spanish speaking, lower economic class community. And so that already is sending a signal, whether you think about it or not. Right. And your coffee shop is going to exist in a similar context. Right. You're going to be in a neighborhood that has a particular demographic profile. And you can choose to conduct yourself in a way that feels welcoming, that feels like it is a part of the neighborhood and a part of the place that, is most likely to support you geographically. And there's a way that you can do this in an exclusionary way. And you can say, we're better than you. We're not a part of we're not a part of our neighborhood. And you can alienate people, right? By conducting yourself that way. When I think about being kind of for everyone and how that can hold you back, you are sending those implicit signals through your brand and having ownership of them and thinking of them as a reason why a customer is going to have a relationship with you. That's, I think, how you can start to harness this innate social behavior that we all have.
I like that what you said about who are you making feel home, right?
Yeah.
Who are these people who are coming back to you time and again every day? So if I don't, as a coffee shop owner, if I don't know who I'm really serving to, what small action or step you would recommend me that I can immediately do this week in my
Yeah.
team?
The first thing that came to mind when you asked me this question ahead of this conversation was meet your regulars. That was the first thought that I had was, when we think about customer segmentation and lifetime customer value, right? I find this especially true in food service is regulars make like that 80-20 distribution, 20% of your customers give you 80% of your revenue, right? And it's not just their own activity, but the way that in coffee, it's a social space. In food service, it's a social space that you're bringing other people with you. And so when I think about that kind of first small action that I might recommend, start to know your regulars, start to know their names, start to know their drink orders, take that on as a bit of homework to say, I'm going to start making a notebook. I'm going to start remembering faces and making sure that you are starting to create a symmetrical relationship with this customer. They come in, they know your business, they know your menu, they know how they like their drink. They might know maybe one or two of your baristas. But make it a point to start to know them.
I love that. Love that. And I wish we had more time to dive deep into all of these, with the what and the how of it. But we'll save that for the next conversation. This
Okay.
was a pleasure, Matthew, having you for this mini podcast with Inside the Grind. Thanks so much for sharing insights.
All right. Thank you so much, Arthur.
Yeah. That's it for this episode of Inside the Grind. If something here helped, make sure to subscribe and pass it to another coffee shop owner friend. We all need each other more than we admit. To learn more or join the community, head to coffeefutures.fun. This movement is just getting started. Until next time, keep brewing. Your shop matters more than you know.